Hello everyone. In this video, I would like to briefly go over and discuss the monumental changes that have been occurring in recent weeks slash months that, of course, pertain to the world and society as we know it. And so these changes that I'm vaguely referring to are the shifts in power, particularly pertaining to the West, of course, led by the United States, and their adversaries, of course, led by China, or more specifically, BRICS. Now, obviously, BRICS meaning Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which is basically an alliance that are seeking a different way and a different method in order to flourish, if you will, without folding or subjugating themselves to the power of the West, or more specifically, the United States. And we've been seeing lots of development in recent times, development that is honestly groundbreaking. Now, I'm not saying these things to get some kind of hair on fire reaction from anyone. Not that it would require that, but these are things that have been taking place over time and will continue to develop slowly. There will be no extreme changes in the future. Obviously, you've been hearing things or reading things in the press or in the media, maybe not US media or Western media because they like to pretend like these things don't exist, but you may have been seeing things like the dollar is on the decline, the petrodollar is on its way out. These things are indeed true, but it's not like the dollar will become useless tomorrow. No, these are things that are happening slowly over time, but they're very important to discuss because we can't pretend like these things aren't happening. So before I get into this discussion and just go over a couple of events that I think are extremely relevant, I want to read to you several facts and just things that have been happening in recent times. So, no dollar. China has issued the first yuan loan to Saudi Arabia. The Export Import Bank of China and the National Bank of Saudi Arabia have successfully concluded the first loan agreement, which involves yuan financing of Sino-Saudi trade projects. Wow. So moving away, as I just stated, from the US dollar. The Saudi Iran peace brokered by China today may very well be the cornerstone for petro yuan, i.e., oil being sold for Chinese yuan. Obviously, this Didente also paves the way for both Saudi and Iran to join BRICS. That's extremely important. Imagine a BRICS plus with three oil giants: Russia, Saudis, uh, Iran, etc. Breaking, this is from Unusual Whales. China and Brazil have reached a deal to trade in their own currencies, ditching the US dollar as an intermediary. This is as recent as 3 days ago. Breaking again. Saudi Arabia has joined a China led security bloc and trade alliance with China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and others, per CNBC. And finally, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Algeria, Argentina, Mexico, and Nigeria are among the latest countries that are interested in joining BRICS. And past the form of simply being interested, at the very least, in the case of Mexico, I think they've submitted a formal request to join the organization known as BRICS. Now, why am I reading these things to you? I'm reading these things to you because the mass media here in this country would not like you to know that these things are happening. No, they like to pretend like they don't exist. These are things that are happening over there if they do choose to acknowledge them, and they won't really affect you in any way. And towards the end of this video, as I wrap this up, I'll show you that this affects all of us in major ways. Not necessarily because of what's happening, but how the forces that don't want this to happen will respond to these events. Now, let's dive into a little bit of this. So, Saudi Arabia, China, the People's Republic of China, they were called in by Saudi Arabia to basically establish diplomatic relations with Iran. Um, Iran and Saudi Arabia in recent times have had a very troubled relationship. Many will say it's due to religion, history. They'll point out many different particulars as to why this is. I'm no expert on the issue, but at the very least, things have not been good between these two places. And China was called in to basically broker a peace deal, which was seemingly successful. And this is monumental because guess who they did not call on to broker this peace deal? Yes, the US. The US, their door was not knocked on to come handle relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And if you remember, the US has been cheering on Saudi Arabia for their war in Yemen, in which they've been decimating the population, while Iran has been supporting the Houthi rebels in that particular area. So this war has taken a turn for the better, in the sense that it will stop because China has stepped in to broker peace, and now their diplomats are meeting once again, and they're talking with each other, etc. Once again, another event that is happening without the U.S. being a part of it. Now, there's also the case of China's relations with Russia, Iraq, Iran, and Venezuela. These, as I would call them, the four horsemen of oil and energy. You see, you can't pretend like this isn't happening, or this is somehow not the case. No, they're deepening their relations. All the Ukraine war did was push Russia and China closer together. And so now Russia is depending on China more, and China is depending on Russia more. Russia is a huge exporter of oil and energy. China is the biggest user of energy in the world, the second biggest user of oil. And now they're ever so closer to all these big oil and energy moguls. Well, when people say that the petrodollar is going to be replaced by the petro yuan, they're not just talking nonsense. No, these are claims that are backed up by genuine evidence that is transpiring before our very eyes. And so what we see is we see a block of the world that is on the decline. The Western Alliance is looking pretty much the weakest it's ever been. The Europeans are questioning themselves every day about their support for the United States' war in Ukraine, because particularly Germany, but all of Europe are feeling this in terms of the failed sanctions that they've put against Russia that haven't worked, that are actually having reverberating effects that are hurting themselves in terms of the inflation and the high cost of energy. I mean, you just take a look at France. I mean, the government in France is on its way out. They can't survive anymore. The people are fed up. They won't take any more of the austerity. Much of the same can be said of places like Germany, where the potential has, or the same events have the potential of occurring there, among many other places. But as I said before, why this is important is how the West will react to these sorts of things. So throughout history, you can look at any empire, any leading country or whatever, and on their way up, things were great, things were fine. They experienced growth and prosperity, all the positive words. But on their way down, these empires, the latest being the American Empire, they tried to evade, to slow, to delay, maybe even to stop altogether this decline. And the way that it's always ended up happening throughout history is through militarism. These empires always try to preserve their dominance, their hegemony through militarism. And you're seeing examples of it now with the sending U.S. Congress people to Taiwan to exacerbate tensions with China. The entire proxy war in Ukraine, the flying of planes and ships across the South China Sea. I mean, it's you're seeing it. You're seeing it. The manufacturing consent. I mean, in this embarrassing symbolic gestures that I mean, there's an endless list of them. You know, American technology companies can't come up with an app to combat the Chinese one, i.e., TikTok. So they're trying to ban it here and come up with weird claims as to why it's dangerous or there's a security risk or whatever else because they don't have the means to compete with it. You know, the shooting down of balloons and oh, the Chinese are spying on us, and we don't even hear about that story anymore. It was there. It served its purpose for 2 weeks to get the people afraid of the big bad Chinese that's never done anything bad to them or enacted a policy that negatively affects their lives. But obviously, that balloon story was there to serve its purpose, and sure it did. And things may only get worse from here, with obviously our mass media system doing what they do best, which is put propaganda in front of our eyes all day, every day. But these are events, these are things that have been occurring that I thought was ever so important to talk about and discuss. And as we move forward, the best way to move forward is to not pretend that these things aren't happening and aren't occurring, but to face them head on and to face them with at least some semblance of reality.